Quality public television is made possible through the financial contributions of viewers like you, who invite you to join them in supporting UNC-TV.
The House begins its voter ID debate. We'll explain a constitutional play, an argument being made by the Democrats on that. A Senate plan could let school systems decide how to spend its elementary school funding. And would drug testing of welfare recipients be a family-friendly policy or one that hurts our families? Hello, I'm Kelly McCullen. Thanks as always for watching Legislative Week in Review. Voter ID tops this week's show. We've been following the public feedback portion on House legislation that would require you to show a photo ID before you cast a ballot. Legislators began their internal committee debates this week. Republicans say the public wants voter ID. Democrats say they're creating a barrier that's conjuring bad memories of decades past. House committees began legislator-only debates this week on voter ID legislation. Republicans say ID requirements will restore integrity to North Carolina's voting process. They say they've answered critics in recent weeks who've said IDs will shut people out of casting ballots due to a lack of an ID card or the expense of obtaining one.
If you do not have a photo ID and you need help securing one, that we will cover the cost of doing that. We will reimburse the clerks of court if they have a cost involved in doing a birth certificate or a marriage certificate. The idea is the fee itself will not be an obstacle to someone getting a voter ID card.
House Democrats raised objections on state constitutional grounds. They say North Carolina's Constitution does not allow for changing the qualifications of voting. Democrats say House conservatives who tout states' rights should respect the state constitution instead of comparing their bill to other states' efforts.
But federalism, which this body loves, says that only the North Carolina Supreme Court can interpret the North Carolina Constitution as it applies in North Carolina.
And when the Georgia Supreme Court interpreted the challenge by the Democrat Party of Georgia to the Georgia voter photo ID law, the Georgia Supreme Court interpreted the Georgia provision of the Georgia Constitution, which is very similar to North Carolina's, to allow the legislature to prescribe reasonable regulations as to how these qualifications shall be determined.
The House's senior statesman, Durham County Representative and Democrat Mickey Michaud, says there is no problem with North Carolina's voting process and says results of civil rights work 40 and 50 years ago extended voting rights under a system with proven integrity.
You raise a specter of fraud where there has been shown, even your speaker has said that fraud is not the question, but the integrity of the vote is the question. That nobody has questioned the integrity of that vote, even since we had to fight to get that integrity.
It appears legislative opinion on voter ID among House Democrats and Republicans is well established. The vote will be highly partisan. The bill appears poised for that full House debate next week. State tax credits recently allowed families of special needs students to offset educational expenses, but you had to pay state income tax to receive the tax credit. A new bill, which would scrap the tax credit for a voucher or scholarship, is now on the table, and it would ignore income limits. A bipartisan House group believes a current state tax credit that helps families of special needs students afford private lessons or education should be replaced. They're proposing a new statewide scholarship program. It's money that could be used to pay private school tuition if special needs students are not being served very well by the traditional public education system.
Our children are not interchangeable parts. They all have different needs, and children with disabilities have a particularly long list of needs.
Families of special needs students could qualify for up to $6,000 in annual scholarships. Guilford County Representative Marcus Brandon says the scholarship program would, for the first time, include all qualifying special needs families. The current tax credit on the books for special education applies only to families who pay enough in state income taxes.
Most of the people that I needed to be able to have access to this scholarship was not actually eligible due to the fact that they did not actually pay income taxes. So this eliminates that problem.
Some Democrats say $6,000 will not cover a year's private special education tuition and will still eliminate low-income families from educational options afforded the middle and upper income brackets.
children live in poverty because their parents live in poverty. And so I have to be concerned about the parents who I know just cannot afford this.
Chief bill sponsor Representative Paul Stam admits this bill isn't perfect, but it's much better than what's on the books.
This bill doesn't solve all problems. It just gets some $6,000 a year closer to a solution. But the second answer is this. There are many schools, practically all private schools are nonprofits, and if you get close enough to what you need, they'll provide scholarships of their own.
Bill supporters say the legislation would give North Carolina parents the power to decide the scope of a child's special education, whether it's a complete private education or the hiring of specialists on an as-needed basis to supplement a public education. But Democrats went on the record saying they oppose shifting any education funding away from our public schools toward private education tuition.
The governor's budget actually hurts public schools by taking away teaching assistants. And you are on your way here to underfunding the public schools, and I think it's wrong.
The focus here, folks, is on the child. It's not on the institution. It's not on who is providing the services. The focus is on the child and the fact that the needed services are being provided.
This is a bill that faces hearings in multiple House committees before reaching the House floor for a final vote. The House moved closer to streamlining some reports and paperwork that's required of our public educators. The State Board of Education would digitize students' individualized education plans, or IEPs. Schools with 80% of its students performing at or above grade level could implement a local education approach and strategy to remediation courses.
IEPs that are a very laborious process for teachers to fill out on students who have various limitations, disabilities. We can do this in a more effective and efficient manner and still keep it accurate, accountable, and maybe even more thorough.
The House made its own move this week to change teacher tenure and school accountability policy. A Senate bill's already out that would end tenure outright. This bill doesn't ban teacher tenure, but could make it tenuous for teachers who slip on job effectiveness. Some House Republicans and Democrats are offering legislation that looks a lot like the Senate's Excellent Schools Act for fundamentally changing public school teacher pay and a policy of a guaranteed job commonly called tenure. It's House Bill 719. It would create an 18-member task force to review teacher effectiveness and compensation structure. Think merit pay on that one. But the legislation would also address tenure. It would restrict it for many teachers, but not eliminate it as a policy.
It's two things that this legislature has talked about for a number of years, and that is performance pay, merit pay, alternative pay, it has many names, whatever you want to call it, and career status or tenure reform.
The House bill's teacher tenure proposals would allow teachers to earn something called career status after 4 years' service. They'd need to accomplish some goals, like a score of accomplished for 2 of those 4 years. Their students would need to show 20% growth in State Board of Education performance standards for 2 of those 4 years. The teacher would need a 4th-year evaluation of highly effective. If a teacher should fall short, the school would report them to the State Board of Education, which could adopt rules for teacher remediation.
I think that this is one of the best looks at the major issues in a real way that will strengthen public education, not harm public education, and will get teachers that we need, teachers who are performing, and recruit and retain teachers without hurting the profession.
Teachers can earn career status. They can also lose it if they fall short of measured goals 2 consecutive school years. That would place them on a 2-year probation. If they can meet their outlined goals while on probation, the local school board would hold the final vote on giving that educator career status again. This comprehensive bill contains other provisions that seem to reflect the Senate's Excellent Schools Act, but this House bill is sponsored by representatives commonly affiliated with the political left and right that quelled debate in the House Education Committee and helped the bill move forward. The Senate's holding 2 bills to save cursive handwriting lessons from elementary school obsolescence. North Carolina schools are still teaching cursive for the most part, so state education leaders in Raleigh have no problem cementing cursive writing as a mandated lesson. Nationwide, there's some talk that texting and typing are replacing cursive writing as a priority skill. The Back to Basics bill, as it's called, would also require that kids memorize their multiplication tables. Randolph County Republican Senator Jerry Tillman told me a few weeks ago that a bill was coming would let schools spend state funding pretty much how they'd like. This week, that bill was heard. It would allow local school districts to decide how to spend money earmarked at elementary classrooms, but not remove money from them. The Senate Education Committee approved legislation that could allow local schools the freedom to reallocate state funding of certain classrooms.
If I'm responsible as a school superintendent for the grades of the schools in my district, and I've got a finite or a shrinking pot of money, that if I've got more flexibility with that money, I can do what I need to do.
Senator Jerry Tillman's bill would create local budget flexibility for school funds targeting kindergarten through third grade classrooms. It would lift state mandates on classroom size and require local school districts to outline their spending habits on the internet in full public view. Funding for teacher assistant positions could be shifted to other student-first personnel positions, and salaries for vacant teacher assistant positions could be used to reduce elementary school class sizes and hire teachers. The North Carolina Association of Educators say 90% of local school budget cuts have come from the classroom in recent years. They're afraid if local schools can shift money where they want, they'll target these classrooms again.
We're all perplexed by this. We're frustrated by this. And at NCAE, we feel like we're about to give our 115 LEAs even more discretion to make more cuts.
Senate Bill 374, as it's called, carries the support of local school districts statewide.
We believe that this flexibility has always been needed for our school districts so that we can give our children the best opportunities.
The proposal in practice could let local schools increase class sizes for some grades while lowering them in others. Teacher allotments could also change. No money could be shifted from classrooms into central office administration, and special needs classes could not see funding shifts by law.
The Raleigh paper had a good time saying that we'll have classes with all kind of crazy numbers in them. If you do, fine, go ahead. Get me results, and I don't care if you have 30 or 13. I care less. I do care whether you made progress or not, and we're going to grade you on that.
The Senate Redistricting Committee has approved fundamental changes to the Wake County School Board's districting structure. Senator Neil Hunt proposes creating 7 district school board seats and 2 at-large board seats. Local elections the next cycle or two would change as the board transitions to this new structure that would shorten current Democratic terms and lengthen the terms for Republican school board members.
In several cases throughout Wake County, a parent may live in one school district and his child may go to school in another school district, and the parent needs to be able to vote for the school board member that represents the school that his child attends.
It is unfair. It is unwarranted. It is certainly political. And it doesn't serve the citizens of North Carolina, whether it's in Charlotte, Greensboro, Asheville, throughout the state, well.
Some House Republicans proposed a free market approach to pricing car insurance policies in North Carolina. The state features a rate bureau that negotiates policy rates with the Commissioner of Insurance. North Carolina statistically has low insurance prices under this scheme or plan, a fact that made the House Insurance Committee throw up a stop sign on the bill. The effort to free car insurance companies from the pricing that's negotiated between the state insurance commissioner and the state rate bureau hit a stop sign in the House Insurance Committee this week.
If you pass this bill, car insurance rates in North Carolina will go up. The only people pushing this bill, ladies and gentlemen, stand to profit from it.
Current state law allows the Commissioner of Insurance to stop car insurance price hikes he deems excessive or unfair. House Bill 265 would have let car insurance companies set their own policy prices, allowing yearly increases in aggregate of 7%. Supporters of that change say good and bad drivers would ultimately pay the fair market price and receive insurance products not currently allowed in North Carolina.
What's wrong with the present system? It is founded on the premise that one size fits all. A uniform policy for everyone, a uniform rate for everyone. The Commissioner and the Rate Bureau settle an agreed rate. Everyone starts with that base rate.
North Carolina's AARP State Director told House Insurance Committee members he expects his members would see rate hikes.
They'll recognize that their clean driving records will be disregarded. No tickets, no DUIs, no accidents, yet their rates are rising without explanation. Some will ask why the state's insurance commissioner isn't stopping these rate hikes. unaware that the Commissioner no longer has the legal teeth and bite to challenge the rate increases.
The public testimony this week followed last week's discussion among just the Insurance Committee, which was less partisan than public feedback. But the public feedback apparently helped kill this legislation, 18 to 11 in committee. The full Senate passed a car insurance bill to let companies offer optional products on policies. State regulations require that standard blueprint for insurance policies, so you do not see many frills. Senate Bill 180 would let companies tack on policy enhancements. The insurance commissioner, Wayne Goodwin in this case, would get final review of these options and their costs, but the Rate Bureau would stay out of the matter. The Senate has endorsed another insurance bill, this one aimed at young drivers. Senate Bill 181 would allow drivers young age to be considered in the setting of rates. The state insurance commissioner would consider not a younger driver's experience, but whether or not that driver is under 19 years old. Teenage drivers could then be assessed policy surcharges. State Insurance Commissioner Wayne Goodwin joins us. Wayne, when I hear lawmakers tell me they've got to study a bill, and this is a car insurance bill I'm talking about, I need to call you and get you on here. What was this bill about from a policy perspective? We know you didn't like it.
Right. What this bill is about was to dramatically reform the way we set car insurance rates here, and despite what folks were being told, it was going to affect every driver in the state, not just what people may consider as bad drivers.
The argument was not about the rates. Everyone agreed the rates were low, so you had bipartisan agreement on that. But is it because Southern drivers are better drivers that rates are low, that free market would do what the Rate Bureau does?
It's a combination of factors. I mean, it is not a coincidence that as the last Rate Bureau state, that we have consistently over many years had some of the lowest average car insurance rates. We have the lowest in the South from Delaware to Texas, and between the 3rd and 7th lowest in the whole country. I think it's a combination of factors, but having the system we have certainly plays a significant role.
All right, the Rate Bureau, we read about it and hear about. What is the Rate Bureau?
The Rate Bureau is a private entity created by the General Assembly back in the 1970s, and the folks who are on the Rate Bureau, it's the insurance industry. The insurance carriers who write car insurance here in North Carolina have representatives on the Rate Bureau. And a lot of folks mistakenly think it is part of the Department of Insurance. It is not. We actually are often, in fact, every time on the opposite ends of the argument on many issues.
So the Rate Bureau sits down, they come up with the policies they want to offer, they come up with prices more importantly. They give them to you, and you do what with what they want to do with pricing?
The Rate Bureau, with all of its experts and representatives from the various car insurance carriers, they decide what types of forms and policies will be needed by consumers here and drivers here, and looking at all the data in an aggregate form, they say, you know what, this is what the pricing range probably needs to be to ensure that folks get the best price, but also that the companies can make a reasonable profit. Because one of my jobs is to prevent folks from having excessive rates, and the companies want to make sure they can have an opportunity to make a reasonable profit. The Rate Bureau makes a filing every year, then my experts review it to see if it meets the law.
And how do you know when you've gotten it right? Because you have a vested interest as an elected official to get reelected, so you want rates nice and low. How do you know when you've gone too low?
You know if you've gone too low if car insurance companies start leaving the state or they refuse to write any further in the state.
So they're not trapped here?
No, they're not trapped here. No, in fact, we have car insurance companies are following over each other to get to North Carolina. We have over 166 car insurance companies actively writing here in North Carolina, and it's a very competitive market.
Now, that was a House bill. It failed in committee, so you can assume it's dead for 2013, 2014. And you were active on that committee to beat that bill. Republicans killed that bill. Right. It was a Republican bill. The Senate has two bills that did pass the Senate. One's about younger drivers, and it says, well, if you're under 19 years old, the way I read the bill, you could be charged a surcharge just for being a young driver, no matter how good you've driven. Have I got that accurate?
In essence, yes. The goal is to make sure that the law on the books now is clear and doesn't pull in folks who aren't young drivers but who are experienced drivers. It was to help fine-tune the law so that truly inexperienced operators of vehicles who are just now have gotten their licenses have that show up in the billing. We want to make sure that somebody who may be experienced in another state or perhaps is here and has a company that's come here from out of the country, that they are not going to be charged higher just because they weren't an experienced driver here. So it was fine-tuning the law as it relates to young drivers.
You will not show up for that. You like that bill.
I like that bill.
All right, the next bill that came out involved optional products. Insurance companies can add things to a policy at the customer's discretion. You get to say in how well it's priced and whether it's any good or not. You like that bill?
I like that bill because of the three things that consumers talk with me about all across the state: pricing, competition, and what about these products they see advertised on TV? We got the lowest prices, we got tremendous competition. What about these products that aren't being offered here as they're offered in other states? This bill that I support, which has passed and is moving through the General Assembly, gives tremendous flexibility for companies now who want to offer these products to drivers here to bypass some of the current system, still have oversight by my folks to make sure it's legal, and to have these products offered and available for drivers.
Wayne Goodwin is the State Commissioner of Insurance in North Carolina. Thank you, sir, for being on Legislative Week in Review.
My pleasure.
The House backed New Hanover County Senator Tom Goolsby's anti-sex trafficking bill this week. The public could soon learn and look up whether or not a convicted sex trafficker, commonly called a pimp, lives nearby, all courtesy of the Sex Offender Registry.
This bill would add the offense of human trafficking to the list of offenses that require registration as a sex offender if the offense is committed against a minor who's less than 18, or if the offense is committed against any person with the intent that they be held in sexual servitude.
Union County Representative Greg Horn guided his Kyla's Law bill through the Senate this week. His bill would out child abusers whose criminal conviction would only show domestic violence as the offense that was committed. The Senate approved tracking these child abusers by noting a domestic violence victim is a child.
That will allow us to know the serial activity of child abusers, to know specifically how child abusers are adjudicated, and help us track them as they make their way through the system.
A Senate subcommittee is working legislation requiring that adults report children they believe missing to authorities. The bill sponsors are looking to that Kaylee Anthony case that happened in Florida a few years ago. That little girl was not reported missing by her family until a month after she disappeared. This proposal would let North Carolina prosecutors charge adults who stay silent if prosecutors believe that adult should have known the child had vanished.
If the unthinkable happens and that child's life cannot be saved, what we want it to be is a tool for prosecutors to hold the perpetrators accountable and to achieve justice for on behalf of the victim and the victim's family.
A Senate bill that would require welfare recipients to be drug tested is poised for a full Senate vote after earning committee approval this week. Republicans say cash benefits that support possible drug use hurts honest, low-income families that need cash assistance. Democrats say this bill unfairly targets those very same families. Macon County Senator Jim Davis is receiving conservative backing to require illegal drug testing of recipients and applicants of the Work First, or Temporary Assistance for Needy Families program. Law says people with drug problems aren't supposed to receive these benefits.
Right now, current law states that if you have an identified drug problem that you don't qualify for TANF benefits, but there's no way of enforcing that.
Democrats on the Senate Health Care Committee jumped on this bill, saying it singles out a particular group of people for scrutiny it does not deserve.
We seem to be constantly targeting the same group of people, assuming they're the ones with the drug problems, as opposed to the sportscaster who just died who had some alcohol abuse problems.
Orange County Democratic Senator Ellie Kinnaird says the Constitution doesn't support bills like Senate Bill 594.
You cannot just test somebody without probable cause or reasonable suspicion that ripens into probable cause, because it violates the Fourth Amendment right to be secure from unreasonable searches and seizures. And this is unreasonable because it's a blanket.
But Senate Republicans believe the lack of drug testing means cash welfare payments are being used at times to support some recipients' drug habits. If that could be stopped, they say more money could be freed to help more drug-free families.
I think that it's very important that we don't continue to fund a drug problem with state funds. And to make sure that we're putting more cash into the system that can be used to destroy our communities and moving forward. And I think this testing is a very good way that we can begin to get a handle and control on some of those problems.
Senate Democrats cannot stop this bill's passage and movement, but a state law that would mandate drug testing for welfare applicants and recipients would most likely face a court challenge. The House continued its discussion of regulating in-state wind farms. It's House Bill 484. It would require wind farms prove that their proposed operations would not harm the military in North Carolina. Military bases are under the threat of closure. Bill supporters say a misplaced wind farm could threaten these military installations.
Ultimately, when a base is put on the consideration list of being closed down, whether it's likely or not, the lobbies behind the areas where those respective bases are become extremely focused on anything that can give their hometown, their home state base an advantage.
House Democrats offer legislation to lessen lawsuits between property owners and their homeowners associations. Mediation could be the first step instead of civil court action. The North Carolina Dispute Resolution Commission would help set up the hearings. Homeowners, if you owe delinquent dues, you could not request mediation to solve the collections issue. Went online this week. Find us online on Facebook, facebook.com/LegWeek. If you tweet, we are on Twitter. Our Twitter name is @LegWeekInReview. And our email address, if you have questions or comments about this show, legweek@unctv.org. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next week.
Quality public television is made possible through the financial contributions of viewers like you, who invite you to join them in supporting UNC-TV.